What's up, guys? Welcome back to Unqualified Critics. Thanks for watching the video. So a few weeks ago, I reviewed my NBA Jam Arcade 1-Up. So I've had more time to spend with the NBA Jam, and I'm gonna let you guys know what I think about it now as sort of an update to my review. But in addition, I decided I should build the Ultimate NBA Jam. And if you've been watching the channel, you know my version of Ultimate doesn't mean swapping out the PCB for Raspberry Pi and really reinventing the whole cabinet. I just like to put a little finishing touch on things sometimes and get the most out of it. So what I've done, and these parts have been provided by an eBay seller who has an eBay and an Amazon shop. I'll put the links below if you're interested in picking up your own versions of these upgrades. He sent a handful of upgrades. I didn't use everything he sent. So for example, he provided translucent red and blue bat tops. Now, I like to stick with the original color scheme. The translucent bat tops did look cool, but I opted not to use them. But he sent 6-pound tension springs as one upgrade, and I'm really glad he did, because if I were on my own buying these, I would have bought 4-pound springs. I've used 4-pound springs before. I like them. I always assumed 6-pound springs would be too heavy for the Arcade 1-Up, would cause it to slide around. Turns out that's not the case. So if you are going to replace your tension springs, I would recommend the 6-pound springs. Again, link below. He sent circular octagonal gates. Now I'm sticking with my square gates. That's what the original had, as I understand it, and that's what I like to play with for this kind of game. Also have an Ethernet USB adapter. So if you guys watch Retro Ralph, you know that he figured out, he was the first one to do it, that the micro USB port in this PCB is live. You can get a network connection. Now, interestingly, you cannot draw power from that port. I've tried, but you can get a networking connection, which is pretty slick. So we take this cabinet, we hardwire it with Ethernet to micro USB, and then we also add the topper from Zabo's Arcades, and that is really the finishing touch on this cabinet. It really makes it a proper centerpiece. So those are the things I recommend for upgrades. I have a coupon code for you for the Zabo's topper. I'll drop that below. If you pick one up, make sure and use that code and save yourself some money. I don't make any money from that. That's not an affiliate link. It's just strictly to get you guys a few bucks off if you plan to pick up the topper. And if you've got an NBA Jam, man, you need to pick up the topper. The topper is sweet. All right, now that I've had the cabinet longer, what do I think about it? Well, the biggest thing is, to be honest with you guys, I've not played it as much as I thought I would. Now, I know I'm talking about updating my review. I must have played it, a bunch more. Well, I have played it more, but I thought I would come back to it more than I did, and I really haven't. It's a beautiful cabinet. I still very highly recommend it for $400 for the base package, or even $500 for the deluxe. Either way, if you're into 90s era arcade gaming, you got room for this in your game room, you just have to have it. It's NBA Jam. And the implementation of the online play is still pretty good. There are jitters I get from time to time, which you may see in the background video that I collected earlier. I connected to another player with Ethernet, by the way, and when I was in his game, I would just get these crazy jitters every so often. And I've got to say, too, when I'm on Wi-Fi, I don't notice it being any more of a degraded experience than hardwire. From what I've read from the developers of this game, Code Mystics, not the developers of NBA Jam, but the developers of this Arcade 1-Up and online implementation, this uses so little bandwidth, and there's plenty of room for ping, because this isn't like a Twitch-based game, like a fighting game, that hardwiring it just isn't really worth it. If you want to build the ultimate cabinet, you probably should hardwire it, and that's why I've got the link below. But if you're just looking to save a few dollars, guys, I really think the Wi-Fi is fine. I think the Ethernet meme has been taken a little too far. That's just my perspective. The game is fun. I think, so Hang Time I hadn't played a whole lot. Now that I've spent more time with it, it is my favorite of the three. It feels more strategic, number one. Number two, the computer-controlled player that you're playing with has much better AI than an NBA Jam or Tournament Edition. They're actually useful. They actually score. They do things that make sense. You can set them up for a quick pass when they're in midair, and then they hit the dunk. And it plays better if you're not playing with a human co-player. It plays a lot better. The original NBA Jam, to me, the worst thing about it is how bad that cooperative AI is. I think it's atrocious. It's totally possible. I'm just not playing the game correctly. I'm no great NBA Jam player, but for me as a casual player, it's pretty crappy. But Hang Time fixed that, and I really think Hang Time got a bad rap from reviewers. It came out at the tail end of the 2D hype train. It was all about 3D gaming at that point. Now, what do we know about 3D gaming in the mid 90s, especially console 3D gaming? It didn't age very well. Most of those games didn't play great. Camera controls were poor. The polygon counts were low. It was just not a very good experience. It probably should have stuck with 2D for a few more years. But that's hindsight. At the time, everybody was ready to move on. So for this to be an old school arcade 2D game at a time when there was no nostalgia for any such thing, not like today, there were no nostalgia goggles for the mid 90s in the mid 90s. I think reviewers kind of dismissed this game unfairly. All right, the third time recording this segment, thanks to my dog interrupting me repeatedly. NBA Jam was wildly more popular than NBA Hang Time. So if you came to this cabinet for NBA Jam and you haven't spent time with Hang Time, I'd really recommend you spend some time with it and see what you think. Give it a fair shake. All right, so now let's talk some simple upgrades you can do to improve your NBA Jam cabinet. So to replace the tension spring, the first step is to remove that gate. And I have to tell you guys, replacing these springs, if you've never done it, it's pretty delicate. I've covered it before in a video. Basically, you want to hold down the joystick from underneath, push down on this plastic piece, get this E-ring, which is this E-shaped ring or C-shaped ring, pulled out. Actually, don't know why it's called an E-ring, but it is. And then once it's out, this plastic housing will be removable, and then you're going to expose your spring, which is what we're trying to remove to put in the 6-pound tension springs. After struggling for 15 minutes trying to use needle nose pliers on the last 3 E-rings, I found actually a safety razor worked even better. You just wedge it down in here into the gap and push it out. Not saying I recommend that necessarily, safety first, so keep that in mind, but push comes to shove, if you cannot get that E-ring out, safety razor might be your best bet. Now that we have the 6-pound springs installed, these do feel a lot more solid, as you would expect. I think the springs these came with were 1 pound. Next, to build the ultimate NBA Jam cabinet, we're going to connect this to a hardwire Ethernet. And I'm going to do that with this power line adapter. My router is nowhere near my game room, and my house is not wired with Ethernet. And if you fall into that same issue, then I'd recommend picking one of these up. You do lose a little bit of speed. How much you lose depends on how far you are from the router at this access point. But you are going to get the stability of a hardwired connection. You can connect this to the micro USB port and it'll show up in this menu. So let's give that a shot. All right, if you've seen Ralph's video, you already know how this works. We're going to take a micro USB, plug it into the PCB. It's a little tricky to do if you don't get under it. Take the female USB. I'm going to put links to these parts below. Next, we're going to take the Ethernet cable and connect. I recommend running it through the thumb hole, which is already in the back panel. That way, in case you decide to remove this later, you didn't have to drill any holes. All right, to finalize the hardwire connection, go into your network settings on the cabinet, select network type, and pick wired. I picked automatic for my network settings, and everything seemed to work fine. I was able to connect with other players and play a game, or at least part of a game. There was some stuttering that was happening with the play. It could have been the person I was playing against network connection. I'm not sure, but it was a little bit rough, so I did end up backing out. I also had difficulty connecting with some other people's games. It could have been their fault, could have been my network's fault. I have no idea. But my point is, it's not like the online matchmaking is completely perfect. However, for it being free, it really does exceed my expectations. And it couldn't be the ultimate NBA Jam Arcade 1-Up without that topper from Zabo's Arcades. Really like that product, and I paid for that with my own money. It wasn't something that was just shipped to me. I can tell you guys, it's really well made. It's a nice thick plastic. The print work, I don't know how he applies the print to it, but he does a really good job with it, and it sits right on top. It has a built-in adhesive. You just peel the strip, put it in, and it's angled to be pretty much exactly upright when it sits behind that marquee. Got my 6-pound joysticks, got my hardwired connection, and I've got my topper. Now, in terms of what I think of this cabinet now that I've had it a little bit longer, gotta be honest with you guys, I've not played this as much as I thought I would. Cabinet looks great. I think it's well worth the money. I certainly still feel I can recommend it. Code Mystics killed it, so they did a good job with the emulation. The online play works pretty well. I've had some issues with stuttering before, like you saw on my earlier video, but for the most part it does work, and works pretty well. Works basically as advertised. I like that the deck protector actually has the artwork printed directly on it, so there is the deck itself, which has this colored kind of courtside look to it, but the plastic itself has the NBA Jam logo. It's pretty slick. With the light up deck protector though, it does show every little tiny speck of dust and every little scratch. And these always come with little tiny hairline scratches. And speaking of scratches, I'm not sure the camera will pick it up, but there's a ring around my dust cover. So these dust covers that come with the arcade, if you play it enough, and I haven't even played it that much, will scratch the deck protector. People have been complaining about that before with some of the newer arcade 1-Ups that it scratches up the deck protector. And funny enough, this is the first cabinet I've bought that I've had that issue with. None of my other ones show these scratches. So they've changed what the plexi is made out of, or maybe they've changed the dust covers themselves. Honestly, not really sure. But there you have it, guys. If you want to pick up the cabinet, I'll put a link below. Guesses, if you're into this, you've already bought one, but we'll do that. They've also been showing up more and more in Walmart stores physically, so if you prefer to pick it up in person, check your local Walmart, check Brixie, check Walmart app, actually is what I find to be the most reliable source for Walmart stock. And consider picking up that topper. Also, if you do want to upgrade the joysticks in an inexpensive way without having to replace all the joysticks, but still getting a much sturdier, more solid feel, and if you do want to upgrade the joysticks in an inexpensive way, then click the link below for those 6-pound joystick springs that were provided to me by an eBay seller. I've got a direct link to his shop below, and from there you can also pick up the Ethernet adapter. I'll also drop you a link to the power line adapter. If you do not have Ethernet in your game room, use that product to connect your internet through hardwire through your power line, rather than having to wire with Ethernet, or even worse, have Ethernet strung out across your house. And like I said earlier, I really don't see the need for hardwire connection, but it's good to know it's supported, and that's an easy way to set things up. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed it, and let me know what you think below in the comments on NBA Jam. Is this cabinet worth it for you? Is this something you want to pick up? Did it age as well as you thought it did? I'll talk to you guys later.
I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.